Dino wants to be in the video. Just so cute. This is little Dino. We call him Spirit Dog. We're writing a book about him because Spirit Dog participates in all the readings that happen in this space, and he's a very healing part of sessions. He doesn't come with the book or the model, but you can surely print out a picture of him if you really want him in your space as well.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, I'm back. So I wanted to talk to you about key beliefs in the model. So when I was writing my master's thesis and my doctoral dissertation, one of the major things that you have to do when you're writing that sort of research paper is to establish criteria so that the reader knows what the definitions and the terms mean according to your study. That's for any model, and that's what we're going to do in this video. I want to establish sort of like the ground rules so that the case studies make more sense. First of all, I want to talk about the 0 to 100 and the 48 to 52. You're going to hear me say this over and over and over again. We're going to talk about the voices, collaborative versus competitive voices, the lower nature versus the higher nature, the child, the teen, and the adult, which we briefly talked about already, awareness being enough, and I'll share with you a message about the mustard seed, and that no behavior is technically good or bad. It's simply the thought that determines it. I'm going to share a symbol from Hinduism and Buddhism that will be symbolic. So first, let's start with the concept 0 to 148 to 52. I mentioned in the previous video that the child has a certain voice or words that it uses in its vocabulary. When we have all or none, 0 to 100, good, bad, 0 to 100, that is the voice in which your child will speak in your vocabulary. So when I hear people say, I'm a good person, or I never would do that, you know that they're in child. Immediately I take them to their bad bucket. So what's the antidote? If this is the child, the adult is the 48 to 52. That is the middle ground. That is the gray or the teen. This is what we strive for. I started in the corner putting some of the steps that we've already talked about. I talked to you about mother, father being sort of, the first step in the model. And we're going to talk a little bit about judgment. And so I'll sort of start making the rules in the corner, and then we'll, of course, wrap it up. So the 48 to 52 is the adult sort of voice. What we're going to do as the model progresses, and you see all of the steps unfold, is that we're going to end up in the 48 to 52 each and every time we do the model. If we're successful in reaching the 48 to 52, then we know that we're an adult. This will be expressed more in the case studies. Collaborative versus competitive voices. We have two voices in our head. We're either competing with someone outside or within ourselves. This is the self-sabotage, the ego, this person's prettier or uglier than me, etc. Or we have a collaborative voice. Usually the collaborative voice is the good. I like this about myself. I like my personality. I like my thighs. I like my authentic personality, for instance. Competitive is, I don't like this about myself. What will people think? So this you can really sort of itemize to be the adult, whereas the competitive is more of the child. A little spiritual theory here. If we're in competition with others, we're in competition with ourselves. It's the voice in our head that creates conflict, tension, dissonance. This is when mind, body, spirit is not in unison, when we're in the competitive voice. The collaborative voice is when we're thinking and feeling and acting in unison. This is more of an accord within ourselves. This is when we have health or balance. So let me kind of explain astrologically. In the astrology chart, we've got all these different planets, and everybody has the same exact planets. It's just like having eyes and ears and nose and mouth. However, some of the planets will talk nice things to one another, and other planets will say mean sort of voices. That's also another way to hear the competitive and the collaborative voices. So we want to pay attention. If we're bad-mouthing ourselves, if you pass by yourself in the mirror and you're like, ew, gross, you're in competition. That's sickness, illness, that's disease. If you look at yourself or you have a situation and you like what you experience about yourself, then that is more of the collaborative voice. When we're in the adult, we live much more in the collaborative voice. This does not mean that we love everything about ourselves. This does not mean that we think that we're God and we're perfect. It simply means that we learn to accept. And in our other video, I had in between the good and bad buckets, I had like a little line like this one that said acceptance. So this model is not about changing. This model is not about, oh my God, I have eliminated my quote unquote bad. No, you still may not like your thighs. It doesn't matter. It's the whole thought behind it, which we'll get to. So it's about self-acceptance that you have these quote unquote bad traits that we're after.
Come here.
Lower nature versus the higher nature is a very important concept in the model. You'll hear me say over and over again, accept the divinity, you'll hear me say over and over again, experience the divinity through your humanity. And I want to explain that briefly. I'll have a whole video on just that. Basically, we are made up of a lower nature or an animal nature. And we also have a higher nature or a divine nature. For those of you that are familiar with the chakra systems, in the model we're using, there are 7 chakras. This is sort of like the lower nature, where we have desires. And this is the higher nature, where we view ourselves as more compassionate beings. What we have done is we have judged as human beings our lower nature as bad and our higher nature as good. So you can see the bad buckets there too. What's important about the lower nature and the higher nature is that it's split, if we look at the chakras, as the first, second, and third chakras. The third chakra is around the belly area. Exactly at this area is where we have our self-worth, our third chakra. So therefore, it is the unification of the lower and the lower nature and the higher nature that we learn self-acceptance. Different diagram, same message. Call it child, adult, and the teen is the bridge. Lower nature, higher nature, and self-acceptance is the bridge. This is what we're going to repeat over and over again. It is not about chopping off our lower nature and only living in the divine. On the contrary, if you think that the third chakra is about self-worth and the identity, you actually realize that your divine is located in the lower nature, in the quote-unquote bad. This is why we experience our divinity through our humanity. This is where we unite the bad buckets and the good buckets. I'm not bad because I'm manipulative or envious. I'm just simply human, and I can use those traits that are not necessarily desirous, flip them around, find an adult version of them, and make them productive and useful in my life. Child, teen, and adult. I will use the words child or child mode, adult or adult mode, and the bridge as the teenager. When my children were little, I was terrified of them becoming teens. I think most parents experience this. So I used to tell them that the teenage years would be like a suspension bridge. If you've ever been to Vancouver or Tennessee, they have these beautiful suspension bridges. But one of the things is that they're usually like in between two mountains or two sort of pillars that aren't necessarily very rooted in sort of like a balanced state, so to speak. And so the bridge tends to like sway, and that's how I describe teen. We're walking this bridge. The wind can push us to the right, the wind can push us to the left. What we're trying to do is accomplish this sort of balance, 48 to 52. As a parent, I used to tell my children, I cannot join that bridge with you. All I can do is from the sidelines say, hey, move to the right, move to the left. This is sort of the coaching. That's my job in my therapeutic sessions with my clients, is to coach them to the adult, to the 48 to 52, through the teen years, through what in one video I will explain is the brick wall, the emotions versus feelings. So basically, what happens developmentally in our physical body? The child is egocentric. The child can only rely on the parents for food and milk and diaper changes. The adult pays his own bills, relies on himself for his physical needs. The teenage period is where the child is deciding, do I like my parents' belief system? Do I want to date the people they want? And they're figuring it out. We know teen years are difficult. They're ridden with anxiety. There's stress. We're depending on our friends. We're trying to figure it out. In this model, the teen is simply working the steps. Am I going to choose at a particular moment to act like an adult or a child? And stopping to think about it and why the next thing is awareness is enough for change. So just sitting in the teenage period, questioning, do I want to choose the child? Do I want to choose the adult? Do I want to behave according to my bad buckets or not? Is the whole process. Awareness is enough. You know, in spirituality, or in this sort of spiritual world that we're living in, at least in my world, which is what I attract, people that are looking for self-awareness and how to grow and change and be spiritual. A lot of people come to my practice very confused, not really understanding what spirituality is. First of all, we're all spiritual. We're spiritual beings having a physical existence. So basically every single thing we do is spiritual. The thing with spirituality is, are we aware? Are we conscious? Are we stopping? Are we being mindful? That's why this model is so useful. It is not about really, at the end of the day, if you pick the child or if you pick the adult. It's about stopping, calling the teenager, calling it awareness, calling the present moment, calling it mindfulness, which is going to determine whether or not your life changes. I was channeling for a client and Jesus came through and he explained the parable of the mustard seed that he mentions in the Bible. If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. When he came into this session, he said, if you have faith of a mustard seed, if you change the dimension of a mustard seed, if the thought that shifts the size of a mustard seed, every single thing that comes after will shift. So I want to share a really important diagram, and it's called the Sri Yantra. So I want to share this image. This image is the image of the Sri Yantra. Basically, it's a tiny, tiny dot with 9 triangles all around it. This is a symbol that's used in Tantric Buddhism and Hinduism to sort of explain how the world or the universe was created. So this is based on the tenet that no behavior is good or bad. What happens in this model? In this model, the dot, the mustard seed, the bindi, the moment, creates the triangles, which is the reality. So when Jesus says that you can shift your life based on the size of a mustard seed, it's all rooted in one different thought, one moment where you have awareness, one moment where you do it differently, one thing that you think differently about will then create a whole different reality. So as I said before, the model is rooted in you are creating these situations so that you can go back to your childhood sort of buckets and rewrite your story. So this Sri Yantra, this image, is about the thought. So, no behavior is good or bad. It is simply the judgment that you have around it that determines it. So if you think that being a prostitute or being a slut or being an alcoholic is bad, in your body, in your mind, in your life, you are going to create situations that prove that to be true. If you change your judgment around prostitution, alcoholism, drinking, drugs, whatever it is, then you change your whole world. This brings me to step number 2. We mentioned that, and we're going to go through all the steps, but I'm just kind of making a note here. Everybody, person, place, thing, or situation is your mother and father. And second, what don't you like about a situation? The moment you ask yourself what you don't like about a situation, you're going to identify the judgment in that behavior, in that situation, in that thought, in that thing. This is what I call the mirroring technique. God gave you eyes to see the world, except to see yourself. When you use situations, people, places, and things to inform about yourself, those are the eyes. That is why the importance of mirroring. So first, everybody is mother and father. Second, you created these situations that are uncomfortable so you can look at your judgments and see the mirror, which is you. In the next video, we're going to talk more about the model and continue with Alice's case study.